He left me for my best friend. Now they're both desperate after a family betrayal. Hey everyone, I've got a story about betrayal, heartbreak, and a serious dose of karma. Imagine losing everything, only to watch the people who hurt you fall even harder. Sounds wild, right? Well, it happened to me, and I'm about to tell you all the details. So I've been with my boyfriend, let's call him John, for about 5 years. I really thought we had a great relationship. We were that couple everyone thought would be together forever. At the same time, I had my best friend, Sarah. We've been friends since we were kids, super close, like sisters. It felt perfect. I had a loving boyfriend and a best friend I trusted with everything. John got along with Sarah too, which made things even better. We were all like a little family. At first, I tried to ignore the signs. John and I had been together for 5 years, so I thought maybe he was just stressed. But it wasn't just little things. He started coming home later and later. When I'd ask what was going on, he'd always say, "Work's been crazy," or "I just need some space." Then I noticed Sarah wasn't around as much either. We used to talk every day, see each other all the time, but suddenly she was too busy or had some excuse not to hang out. That was strange. Sarah was like a sister to me, so why did it feel like she was slipping away too? My gut started screaming that something was wrong, but I didn't want to believe it. I trusted them both, so I pushed the feeling aside. But the distance kept growing. Every night John was out late. I'd sit alone in the living room, trying to convince myself that everything was fine. Maybe I was just being paranoid, right? Maybe I was overthinking it. But then it happened. One evening, John left his phone on the table when he went to shower. Something about it just called to me. I wasn't the type to go through someone's phone, but this time, I did. And I wish I hadn't. I opened his messages, and my heart stopped. There were texts between John and Sarah, my best friend. They weren't just talking, they were planning to meet up. It was all there. They had been seeing each other behind my back. My boyfriend and my best friend. I couldn't even process it. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped the phone. I felt like the world had crumbled around me at that moment. Everything I thought was real wasn't. The people I trusted most had betrayed me in the worst way. I sat there for what felt like hours, just staring at the screen, trying to breathe, trying to make sense of it. When John got out of the shower, I confronted him. I showed him the messages. I expected him to deny it, to apologize, to say something. But he didn't. He just looked at me with this blank expression, like he didn't even care. And then he packed his bags, just like that. No fight, no sorry, nothing. He left to be with her. They moved in together, and I was left alone. I felt like my whole world had been ripped apart, and there was nothing I could do to fix it. After John left and moved in with Sarah, it felt like my whole world had fallen apart. I mean, in one moment, I lost two of the most important people in my life. My boyfriend and my best friend. It was like everything I knew, everything I trusted, was gone. I didn't just lose a relationship. I lost the person I thought I'd spend my life with. And I didn't just lose my best friend. I lost someone I'd known for years, someone I shared everything with. At first, I didn't know how to feel. I was angry, hurt, confused. I kept asking myself, how could they do this to me? I replayed everything in my head, trying to figure out when it all went wrong. I was heartbroken, and the pain was so deep that some days I didn't even want to get out of bed. It felt like I had been betrayed by the people I trusted the most, and the pain from that betrayal was unbearable. But even through all that hurt, I knew I had to move on. I couldn't just sit there and let their betrayal ruin my life. I had to find a way to get back up, even though it seemed impossible at the time. And you know what's so strange? After John and Sarah left, they just disappeared. They cut all contact with me. No apologies, no explanations, nothing. It's like they didn't care at all about what they did. For months, I didn't hear a single word from them. No calls, no texts, no, "I'm sorry." It was like I had never existed in their lives, and honestly, that hurt more than I can even explain. It made me feel like I didn't matter to them at all. I guess I was waiting for them to show some kind of guilt or regret, but it never came. At first, the silence from them was crushing. I would sit alone, wondering what they were doing, if they even thought about me, or if they were just happy living their new lives together. That silence weighed on me, and it felt like the hurt was never going to go away. I wanted answers, I wanted closure, but instead I got nothing. It felt like they had taken everything from me and then just vanished without looking back. But slowly I realized something important. That silence, as painful as it was, gave me the space I needed to heal. It forced me to stop focusing on them and to start focusing on myself. I had no choice but to deal with my own feelings and try to figure out what my life looked like without them in it. So I threw myself into work. I took on extra projects, stayed late at the office, anything to keep my mind busy. Work became my escape. It was something I could control, something that made me feel like I was still capable of doing something right. I also started picking up old hobbies that I had forgotten about during my relationship. I began painting again, something I loved doing before everything happened. It helped me express all the emotions I was feeling, and it became a kind of therapy for me. I'd spend hours lost in the colors, letting the brush move on its own while I let my thoughts just drift. Day by day, things started to get a little easier. I didn't notice it at first, but one day, I realized I had gone a full day without thinking about John and Sarah. Then it became 2 days, then a week. Slowly, the pain started to fade, and I felt like I was getting my life back. I was starting to feel whole again, piece by piece. It didn't happen overnight. It was a long, slow process. But I was getting there. I began spending more time with friends and family, people who truly cared about me and had my back. I realized I had an amazing support system that I had taken for granted while I was caught up in my relationship. They helped me find joy again, reminded me that I was worth so much more than the way John and Sarah treated me. Looking back, I can see that what happened, as painful as it was, pushed me to grow in ways I never expected. It forced me to focus on myself, to rebuild my confidence, and to find happiness on my own. I wasn't the same person anymore, and that was a good thing. A few months had passed since John and Sarah walked out of my life. I was finally starting to heal, finding my way again, when out of nowhere, I got a call. It was John's sister. Now I hadn't spoken to her since everything went down, so hearing from her really caught me off guard. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to pick up the phone. She sounded hesitant at first, like she wasn't sure how to start. After a bit of small talk, she finally got to the point. She told me that things hadn't been going so well for John and Sarah. In fact, things were pretty bad. She said, "John's been cut off by the family, financially and emotionally." I was shocked. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Apparently, after John's parents found out about the affair, with Sarah, my best friend of all people, they were absolutely furious. I had no idea they even knew what had happened. I thought that part of my life was behind me, but clearly the drama was still going on. John's family had always treated me like one of their own. They were kind, supportive, and had welcomed me with open arms when John and I started dating. His parents, especially his mom, were always so loving toward me. We'd spend holidays together, have family dinners, and they made me feel like I belonged. But after the affair came to light, everything changed. His parents felt so betrayed, not just because of what John did to me, but because of who he did it with, Sarah. I was basically part of their family, and Sarah, well, she was the one who destroyed that. John's parents couldn't stand the idea of him betraying someone they loved and cared for. It wasn't just about the affair. It was about the way John had treated me, someone they saw as a daughter. The shock was too much for them. They couldn't look at him the same way anymore. His dad, who was always kind but firm, had a very strong sense of loyalty and honor. Cheating? That was something he just couldn't forgive, especially not with someone so close to the family like Sarah. His mom was heartbroken too. I think in some way she felt like she had lost me too, and maybe even blamed herself for raising John to act that way. So they did something I never thought would happen. They disowned him. They cut him off completely. No more financial support, no more family gatherings, no more relationships. It was like he didn't exist to them anymore. The moment they found out about what John had done, they told him he was no longer welcome in their home, and they didn't want anything to do with him. His dad told him to figure things out on his own since he had chosen to betray the people who cared about him. It must have been a huge blow for John. He'd always relied on his parents, especially financially. His family was well off, and he'd been living off their money for years, even when we were together. They had always been there to bail him out of trouble or help him out whenever he needed something. But now, that was all gone. He and Sarah were on their own, and from what John's sister told me, they were really struggling. No money, no support, and no sympathy from the people they had once depended on. I wasn't sure how to feel at that moment. Part of me felt sorry for him. I mean, losing your family like that must be incredibly painful. But at the same time, I couldn't help but feel like this was karma finally catching up with him. He and Sarah had hurt me so deeply, and now they were facing the consequences of their actions. It was like life had a way of balancing things out. They had destroyed my trust and my happiness, and now they were dealing with their own destruction. But what really got to me was the fact that John's family had chosen me, in a way. They had taken my side even though I was no longer part of their lives. They saw the betrayal for what it was and refused to accept it. It made me realize just how much they had cared about me, even after everything fell apart. Their decision to cut John off wasn't just about money, it was about loyalty and values. They couldn't support someone who had done something so wrong, even if that person was their own son. It was a lot to process. I hung up the phone after talking to John's sister, and I sat there in silence for a while. The situation was complicated, messy, and filled with emotions I didn't expect to feel. But one thing was clear. John and Sarah were now facing the consequences of their betrayal, and it wasn't just me they had hurt, it was everyone around them. After hearing about John and Sarah's downfall from his sister, I thought that was the end of it. I figured they'd just fade out of my life completely, and I wouldn't have to deal with them anymore. But I was wrong. Just when I thought things were settling down, I got a message out of nowhere. And not just any message, it was from Sarah. Yes, Sarah, the woman who had not only betrayed me, but destroyed everything I had built with John. I couldn't believe it at first. I sat there staring at her name on my phone, wondering if I should even open the message. Part of me wanted to just ignore it, but my curiosity got the better of me. I opened it, and to my surprise, she wasn't gloating or trying to justify what they did. No, it was the complete opposite. Sarah was begging for help. I mean, I never thought I'd see the day when she would come to me, of all people, for help. She wrote about how things had gone downhill fast. Without John's family's financial support, they had lost everything. She said they were struggling just to make ends meet, living paycheck to paycheck. The comfortable life they once had was gone, and reality was hitting them hard. I could almost feel the desperation in her words. She went on and on about how John was a mess, how he was blaming himself for everything, and how they were barely getting by. She even admitted that they didn't think it would be this hard when they left me and moved in together. It was like everything was catching up with them at once. No money, no family support, no friends. They were completely isolated, and now they were feeling the weight of their decisions. Then she hit me with the part that really caught me off guard. She said they regretted everything. She actually had the nerve to tell me that they regretted betraying me, that they had made a mistake, and that they didn't realize how good they had it until it was all gone. It was like the classic, "you don't know what you've got until it's gone" situation, and now they were drowning in the consequences of their choices. But here's the kicker. Sarah wasn't just messaging me to apologize. No, she was asking for my help. She was begging me to reach out to John's family, to try to mend the relationship between them, to talk to his parents and convince them to forgive him. She said they were desperate, that they didn't know who else to turn to, and that I was the only one who could help them make things right again. I couldn't believe what I was reading. After everything they had done to me, after all the pain they caused, she actually thought I would step in and help them. It was almost laughable. Here was the person who had shattered my life, and now she wanted me to be her savior. The whole thing felt surreal, like I was living in some kind of twisted reality where the people who wronged me were now coming to me for mercy. She told me that John was miserable, that he wasn't the same person anymore, and that they both deeply regretted their actions. She tried to make me feel sympathy for them, as if their hardship somehow justified the pain they had put me through. But I wasn't sure how to feel. On one hand, Part of me was still angry, still hurt by what they had done. On the other hand, hearing about their struggles felt like a strange kind of justice. They were finally facing the consequences of their betrayal, and now they wanted me to fix it. I sat there for a while, just thinking about how far things had come. A year ago, I never would have imagined that this would be my reality, that Sarah would be begging me for help after she and John had torn my life apart. It was a strange feeling, knowing that the tables had turned and that I was the one in control now. When I first saw Sarah's message, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I mean, here I was, the person they had both betrayed, and now they were coming to me, practically begging for help. The two people who had torn my life apart were now facing their own downfall. It was ironic, really. Part of me wanted to laugh at the sheer absurdity of the situation. It was like life had come full circle, and they were now the ones suffering after everything they'd put me through. I read the message over and over, thinking about what I should do. There was a part of me that wanted to lash out, to tell her exactly how much pain they caused me, and how they didn't deserve my help after everything. But something inside me stopped me. I wasn't that person anymore, the one who held on to bitterness and anger. I had worked so hard to move on, to heal, and I wasn't about to let their desperate situation pull me back into that dark place. So instead of reacting with anger or frustration, I simply responded calmly. I told Sarah that I had moved on with my life, that I had found peace, and that their problems were no longer my concern. I didn't rub it in their faces, but I made it clear that I had no intention of getting involved in their mess. I wasn't going to be the person to fix their lives, not after what they had done to mine. They made their choices, and now they had to live with the consequences. It was strange because, at that moment, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I didn't feel the need for revenge or to see them suffer. I had healed enough to let go of the pain, and honestly, it felt good. I didn't need to say anything cruel or vengeful because, in a way, karma had already done that for me. Life had handed them exactly what they deserved, and I didn't need to lift a finger. After sending that message, I didn't wait for a response. I knew there was nothing more to say. I had made my point, and it was time to leave that chapter behind for good. I blocked both John and Sarah after that, not because I was angry, but because I didn't need their drama in my life anymore. I had better things to focus on, and their problems weren't mine to deal with. In the days that followed, I felt lighter, like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I wasn't carrying the pain of the betrayal anymore. It was like I had finally closed the door on that part of my life, and there was no looking back. I thought about them sometimes, wondering if they ever truly understood the gravity of what they had done. But even if they didn't, it didn't matter. I had found my peace, and that was all that mattered. As for John and Sarah, well, that was the last time I ever heard from either of them. They completely disappeared from my life after that, and I never looked back. I heard bits and pieces from mutual friends, things about how they were still struggling, still dealing with the fallout of their choices. But honestly, I didn't care. Their lives were their own now, and I was no longer a part of that story. Looking back, I realized that sometimes karma has a way of handling things better than we ever could. There's no need for revenge or holding on to grudges because, in the end, life has a way of balancing things out. John and Sarah's betrayal had cost them more than they ever expected, and I didn't have to do a thing. They got what they deserved, and I got my peace. It was a lesson in letting go, in trusting that sometimes the universe has a way of delivering justice that's far better than anything we could plan ourselves. And that's the story of how I found closure, not through anger or revenge, but by choosing to move on and let life take its course. It wasn't easy, but in the end, it was the best decision I could have made. I didn't need to fight, to argue, or to prove anything. I just needed to let go and trust that karma would handle the rest. And it did. As I look back on everything that happened, I realized just how much this experience taught me. It was a painful journey, but it brought valuable lessons about loyalty, trust, and the importance of knowing my self-worth. I went from feeling lost and heartbroken to understanding that I deserved so much better than what I was given. The betrayal from John and Sarah opened my eyes to the reality that not everyone who enters our lives has good intentions. Sometimes people are selfish and don't think about the hurt they cause. In the past, I was too trusting. I believed that love and friendship meant that you would always be loyal and supportive. But this experience made me see that loyalty isn't guaranteed, and it's important to be careful about who I let into my life. I realized that letting go of toxic people was the best decision I could have made. It was difficult at first, but I can honestly say that I feel lighter and more at peace now. I no longer carry the burden of their betrayal, and I have space in my life for healthier relationships. Looking back, I can also see that sometimes life has a way of sorting itself out without us needing to intervene. At first, I was angry and hurt. I wanted to confront John and Sarah and tell them how they made me feel. But in the end, I chose to let go. By stepping away, I allowed karma to take its course, and it delivered justice in a way that I could never have imagined. Watching them face the consequences of their actions was a reminder that we don't always have to fight our battles. Sometimes it's better to focus on our own healing and let the universe handle the rest. So if you're going through something similar, maybe you've been betrayed by someone you trusted, just know you're not alone. Life can be tough and people can let you down, but it's important to stay strong. Trust that, in time, things will work out for you. Keep moving forward, focus on your own happiness, and don't let anyone dim your light. Remember, you deserve love, loyalty, and respect. If you enjoyed this story and found it relatable, I'd really appreciate it if you hit that like button. Your support means a lot, and don't forget to subscribe for more intriguing Reddit stories like this one. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments about this wild betrayal and the karma that followed. Have you ever experienced something similar?